Hi, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today. You wrote and directed this wonderful, crazy ride. I was curious, what was the inspiration behind this? How did you come up with this crazy story?
Yeah, so Perpetrator has come out of ideas that began with a lot of the short films that I've made leading up to it, including a feature-length film, Knives and Skin, that premiered here in Berlin in 2019. So many of those films feature, at least a couple, if not a lot, of young women in front of the camera. And I realized over and over again I would get this question like, how is it to work with so many girls? And my answer was always, great, that's why I keep doing it. But I realized that the question was being asked from a place that assumed that it was not great, that it was chaotic or a room full of mean girls, so to say. It occurred to me, in a very profound way, something that I already knew was true, is that we're a culture who's obsessed with youth and beauty among young women, obsessed with, sexuality among young women. And yet we've kind of built this cultural machine that's meant to annihilate them. We really also hate young women and do a lot to sort of destroy their evolution. We also use words like wild and out of control for young women who have agency over their sexuality, who have like carved out an independent path, who are misfits. And that term, wild and out of control, is not meant to amplify, their agency. It's meant to diminish them. So I started thinking about, even prior to releasing Knives and Skin, I thought, wow, I want to make a film about a wild and out of control girl who really becomes wild and out of control. So this thing, this tone that's used to diminish her becomes her superpower. And that's a real base. That's the basis for sort of any classic shapeshifter story. So I thought, there it is. I'm going to make a coming of age shapeshifter story. To follow up Knives and Skin, and then I started writing Perpetrator.
The role of Johnny was she always written as a biracial woman because I felt that added a lot of background to the, like you say, the shape-shifting element, the element of empathy that's being thrust upon her.
Yeah, I'd always meant for her to be, yeah, a multiracial woman. And not only because of that, the potential for Johnny's own real, DNA story to be one of shape shifting, so to say, or one of a more nuanced, complicated, identity actually. But it also meant that there were some interesting casting options for the mother and father character, or for the Hildy character. So I knew, Johnny, sort of Johnny would ground, those other decisions, which I think would just make the whole story more complicated, but based on content. I mean, I always like to cast really inclusively in front of my camera anyway, but in this one, this was a very particular choice.
And how did you go about casting, but also finding your crew? Because I read that your DOP is the first female DOP from Kosovo. It's like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so speaking of sort of like being making sure that the in front of the camera is inclusive, I also have been really aware of making sure that behind the camera is also inclusive. Lots of women, lots of crew of color, lots of non-binary crew, LGBT crew. Really just thinking like, those are the stories that I'm telling. There's a lot of those elements in the story. So being a storyteller that is inclusive, I have to make sure that everybody who's helping make the film is also bringing their authentic self to it. And with Perpetrator, I knew that I wanted to work with a female DP. I just thought it felt, this is such a female-driven story about female friendships and about the legacies of women, and so it felt like I want as many department heads behind the camera that are led by women, and for everybody to look around, just be like, oh, there's a lot of women back here, running the show. Very coincidentally, Sevdia, that's our DP, she and I share the same agency, actually also with Kaya. We're all with Gersh. And, even though, when we had gotten a lot of names, so it simply wasn't something that was packaged by Gersh. But I was talking to a lot of people. What was funny is that her sort of DP headshots. I mean, she's so like profoundly awesome looking, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to talk to her. Really, I mean, not to sound shallow, but just sort of based on, I was like, she looks incredible. She looks like she's like driving a tank behind that camera. And she said the same thing about my headshot. She was like, who is this woman? Like, let's work together. But we had a Zoom call, and she had prepared this amazing kind of lookbook, really broke the script down in terms of what are the themes, what are the tones. She had done homework. I mean, she wasn't attached yet, but she came totally prepared, and we had a really organic conversation. I felt very connected to her own story as a war survivor. That is not, not connected in the sense that that's happened to me, but I thought, God, this woman is just has like succeeded enormously in spite of so many obstacles. And so, yeah, when we attached her, I just felt like, okay, now we're going to make something really special.
And Alicia Silverstone and Chris, it's such a great, adds so much to the young, the young cast, and then to have these more well-known faces. This interaction between those two elements, how did you decide to cast Alicia and Chris?
Yeah, I mean, Alicia was on a list for Hildy for a long time. And actually, Alicia was someone I had thought about for Knives and Skin, to be one of the adults in Knives and Skin. So I had been thinking about her for a long time. I like to oftentimes cast people who have they're like a very significant kind of personal provenance. It felt important that that Alicia was someone who we know from Clueless, for instance, this iconic teen film where she really was a teenager. I mean, she's continued to work. She's made some very interesting kind of decisions in her career, even recently, not including Perpetrator. So her personal provenance seemed interesting. I had never seen her in a part like this. And one of the inspirations for Hildy is the Miriam Blaylock character played by Catherine Deneuve in The Hunger, this beautiful film from 1983 about vampires, and David Bowie's in it, etc. It's just so stylish and cool. And the Catherine Deneuve character, it's got that kind of classic Hitchcockian, blonde, structured hair, just iconic. So I had patterned Hildy after that. Alicia got, read the script, loved the script. She's so smart, thoughtful, funny, a genuine weirdo. I say that with love. So when she got attached, I said, okay, watch The Hunger if you haven't seen it. She watched it, called me, was like, I'm obsessed. Where has this film been? And she just instantly sewed herself into that part. And then Chris, he was the reverse. He read the script, called me, and he said, who are you, Jennifer Reeder? That's one of the weirdest scripts I've ever read. And I was like, well, do you want to do it? He's like, oh yeah, I'm doing it, So he's brilliant. I mean, I hope that just the insanity of his performance comes out. And of course, in real life, he's this curious, smart, awesome person with the heart of an artist. But he tapped into the dark side there. But he's also made some interesting decisions and does a lot of American TV. So I think that doing a film like this is where he was really able to sort of like flex who he really is as an actor. And he also has an interesting part in Promising Young Woman, which I was also like, that's also like an interesting, connection. Just if you think about the kind of meta-ness of sort of who he is. But I really lucked out. And Melanie Libbard, who plays Johnny's mother, has also done a lot of, American TV. She's originally from London, but has done a lot of American TV, and also just really loved the script. Was like, I never get to play parts like this. And she's obviously, she's beautiful. That comes across. But I think she's cast a lot as as someone just strictly beautiful, sort of like, eye candy to look at. And she certainly is still, really beautiful to look at in Perpetrator. But the part is it's not a glamorous part. And it's a sort of a deeper part that really, her acting ability absolutely shines through. So, our four leads, I feel so thankful for. And so many of the rest of the supporting cast who are also remarkable, we filled in from the just amazingly talented theater community in Chicago.
I was curious about how you kind of mapped out the project. Did these twists and turns, were they instinctual, or did you kind of almost have to go against your instincts to keep it fresh and keep it something, because it's something I don't think I've seen like this before.
Yeah, it was a long time coming. I mean, this was I started writing it in 2019. We had thought maybe we were going to shoot it in 2020. Thankfully, we didn't. I mean, we all sort of know what happened in 2020. There's many silver linings, but one of them was that it made me just have to be patient with that script and really pull it apart many times and put it back together and pull it apart many times and put it back together and make sure that the more magical, fantastical elements would work, or not just kind of logically, but, kind of work visually, figuring out what the VFX were going to look like. I mean, this is absolutely the most ambitious thing I've done. And, I'm nervous to make sure that it works and that audiences respond. I mean, especially, I think that even very successful genre films get away with, broken logic. But they, some fans are like, well, I don't care that doesn't make any sense. The monster was cool, right? I don't want to make a film like that. I want to make a film where the monster's cool and, there's something in there for, very smart audiences and the feminist film scholars and, a little bit of, for everybody. But it was a juggernaut, it was a real puzzle to figure out. And when you're the one who's both inventing the puzzle pieces and putting it together, it can get confusing in one's brain. But thankfully in 2020, I had lots of downtime to figure that out.
It definitely reached me. You mentioned that you were here before in 2019 with your film Knives and Skin.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So how is that like for you to come back to Berlin with it's in a panorama section now, the other one was in Generation. Mm-hmm. So kind of like, increasing your visibility a little bit.
Yeah, and even, I was here with a short in the shorts competition in 2015 and with a short in Generation in 2016. So, and then I was back in 2017 to be on the Generation 14 plus jury. So I feel vetted and deeply embraced, by the Berlinale community. I mean, having said that, it's never a given, that they're going to ask another film to world premiere. Perpetrator is a very particular film. It's a real genre film. I think that, where Cannes has embraced genre, Venice some, but Berlin is not necessarily like embraced genre yet entirely. Well, now they have with this one, I mean, I would say Perpetrator is the maiden voyage for Berlin really embracing genre. And so with this one especially, I thought, I don't know what will happen with this film. And it's always my dream to come back and premiere here. Not simply because I really love these audiences and I love Berlin as a city, and the European press really gets me, which I appreciate. But it's like just a profoundly important international film festival. And so many of the film festivals in the US, which are also great, oftentimes really stay within the US. It feels regional to the US almost. Whereas here, my film is playing along with films from all over Africa, from Indonesia, from, indigenous areas. And so, I feel in this kind of community of vital storytellers, and I am, just deeply lucky. But there is something about audiences outside of the US, and maybe even in particular, the Berlinale audiences who respond really well to my version of American, like an American film. I mean, I do think that I make films that really come out of a very specific kind of American culture. But I feel like maybe my criticality or my sense of dark humor is what sometimes is lost on American audiences, but audiences outside the US can see it very clearly.
And just to wrap things up, your film is premiering at Zoopalast tonight, and you mentioned something on social media that's one of your favorite cinemas.
Oh, I mean, the Zoopalast is like, walking into that theater is like a dream. It's beautiful. It is iconic. Even that location, just feels special and iconic, not just to sort of Berlin history, but world history, really. So, I mean, when that was confirmed, you know, from the Panorama team, like world premiere, Zupalast, you know, I just thought like, how can it get better? You know, yeah, hopefully it will. I mean, it's sold out, and you know, I'm so looking forward to sitting in that beautiful theater with the sparkly ceiling, feeling like I'm living inside a dream, and letting audiences, you know, yeah, go on this kind of like wild ride with me.
Congratulations for the film. Good luck to you with the Berlinale Panorama. Thank you so much.
Thank you.